All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. I've been talking about the upcoming college football season, conference by conference. And tonight I'm going to be talking about the upcoming college football season in the Big 12. Now, we know all four of the remaining power conferences have expanded their membership heading into the new college football season as the Big 12 is now at 16, with the additions or welcoming back Colorado as well as the additions of Utah, Arizona State, and Arizona. But with that said, who is going to be able to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and really run with this thing in the Big 12? And the reason why I say it is this: all of the heavyweights from this league are now gone. As far as the teams that have won, you think about it. Oklahoma's in the SEC. They've got pardon me, 11 Big 12 championships to their credit. Texas is in the SEC. They have four, and I'm talking, and then Nebraska, who left back in 2011, I believe. Nebraska's got a pair of Big 12 championships, and then Texas A&M has one. And you look at the remaining programs in the Big 12 that have won this conference on the gridiron. You got K-State with 2 wins, Colorado with one. Of course, that came during their first go round in this conference, and you got Baylor. That's it. There's not going to be a defending Big 12 champion this year due to the fact that Texas won the Big 12 on their way out the door, and of course, the Big 12 really almost had egg on their face last year due to the fact that we almost ended up with Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game before they headed to the SEC. Of course, it was Texas and Oklahoma State. And of course, Texas just beat the brakes off of the Cowboys en route to winning the Big 12 and getting a berth in the college football playoff. But one thing we know for sure, uh, we're going to get a legitimate Big 12 championship game this year. And I say this, and it's been happening for the last couple of years. But, due to the fact that, we saw the Big 12, you know, bring back the championship game when they were kind of left out of the shuffle that year for the playoff. And I was skeptical about it just due to the fact that, you had a 10-team league at the time. Everybody was playing everybody. So what's the purpose of going out there and doing it again? But nonetheless, you got 16 teams. Everybody is not going to face everybody, but it's still going to be the top two teams from this conference trying to win the league and, of course, get that bid to the college football playoff. So you look at the Knights of Central Florida, and of course, they were a newbie to the Big 12 not that long ago. They went 6-7 last year, but I think UCF can improve this year. I say this because, you think about Gus Malzahn. He's forgotten more about coaching than most people know. Okay. And I think, you've given him the opportunity to get adjusted to the Big 12. And I think he's going to take it and run with it. No pun intended. He's got a new quarterback to run his offense in former Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson. And I think a guy like KJ Jefferson with his skill set is tailor made for Gus Malzahn's up tempo offense. And it's not just about the quarterback and Malzahn's offense, it's about the running backs. And you look at RJ Harvey and Johnny Richardson, a dynamic duo. And then you look at the receivers that UCF has, Kobe Hudson and Xavier Townsend. And then you got a lot of experience on this offensive line for the Knights with four seniors up front. Then defensively, nose tackle Lee Hunter, defensive end Malachi Lawrence, and you've got 8 seniors on defense for UCF. And I think that is going to amount for something as Central Florida looks to be a player this year in the Big 12 race. Now, Utah is one of those newbies to the Big 12. And, Utah, over the years, their program has known how to make the adjustments, whether it's going from the WAC to the Mountain West to the Pac 12, and now they got to do it in the Big 12. And their head coach, Kyle Whittingham, has, he's done a great job as far as doing more with less because you're not getting a lot of five-star recruits going to Salt Lake City to play football for the youth. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately, for their program. And you know what? They like it like that because their kids come in with a chip on their shoulder. They got something to prove. They embody their head coach. And at the end of the day, Utah is typically one of the top teams in whichever league that they're playing in. So you look at the Utes in 2021 and 2022, they won the Pac 12. It was one of those where their chances of winning the Pac 12 last year were derailed due to the injuries of quarterback Cam Rising. And the seasoned vet, if you will, is back once more again to be the starting quarterback for the Utes. And it's going to come down to whether or not he can stay healthy. I like outside linebacker Kareem Reed as well as defensive end Connor O'Toole as the Utes look to go out there and make a splash in the Big 12. Now, for Iowa State and head coach Matt Campbell, they fell one win short of getting to the Big 12 championship game last year. Uh, Matt Campbell's one of those guys, you know what? He always gets the most out of his teams. And sometimes when the Cyclones fly under the radar a little bit, they can be very, very difficult to deal with. I've talked about Rocco Becht in the past, and I think as a sophomore now, he's going to build off of his strong freshman campaign. You look at wide receivers Jaden Higgins as well as Jalen Noel, and then running back Abu Sama the third. And then you got a stout Cyclone defense over there in Ames with safety Bo Freiler, outside linebacker Caleb Bacon, and free safety Jeremiah Cooper as they look to make some noise in the Big 12. For BYU, they're looking to get back on track. They finished the year on a 5-game losing streak, and for head coach Kalani Sitake, he doesn't want to get lost in the shuffle once again in this 16-team league because it's very easy to do. And the Cougars only won 2 games within the conference last year. You've got Jake Ratzliff at quarterback. He saw limited action last year behind Keaton Slavis. And keep an eye out for wide receiver Chase Roberts. But then this Cougars defense with defensive end Tyler Batty, cornerback Jacob Robinson and company. How will the Cougars be able to take care of their business in the Big 12 this year? Then you got K-State. And K-State's another one of those teams. They always fly under the radar. They do more with less. And they're going to have to do it once again this year. They lost their starting quarterback, Will Howard, in the transfer portal to Ohio State, which means it's Avery Johnson's show right now. You've got running back DJ Giddens, one of the best ball carriers in the Big 12, in my opinion. And you've got a stout offensive line with 4 seniors and a junior up front. And then this K-State defense, they've got 5 seniors and 3 juniors starting. You got senior free safety Marcus Siegel, outside linebacker Austin Moore, and cornerback Jacob Parrish. Some guys to keep an eye out for. For K-State, they got to travel to Provo on the 21st of September to take on BYU. They host Oklahoma State on September the 28th. And I think that game could be a dandy, and it can go a very long way as far as determining who gets to the Big 12 championship game. Of course, their showdown with Kansas at home on the 26th of October, and then traveling to Ames at the end of the season to take on Iowa State. That is another one of those contests that could go a very long way in determining who gets to Arlington for the conference title game. Now you look at Oklahoma State, and for the Cowboys, 2 out of the last 3 years have seen Mike Gundy's team get to the Big 12 championship game only to be turned away from winning the league and possibly getting to the playoff. Now, Oklahoma State, they're once again expected to be one of the top teams in the Big 12, but will they be the last team standing? Uh, you look at how the transition has come in recent years for Mike Gundy. The first half of Gundy's time as a head coach at Oklahoma State, it was all about his passing game, not a lot of D. Now it's all about the run game for the Cowboys as well as their defense. And of course, the Oklahoma State offense starts and ends with running back Ollie Gordon II, one of the best ball carriers in the nation, second to none. And I think he is going to be in the mix to win the Heisman Trophy this year. You got an offensive line full of seniors. I like the wide receiver combo with Rashad Owens and Brendan Presley. Like I talked about the other night in my top 25, I said, quarterback Alan Bowman has got to cut down on the INTs. He threw 14 of them last year. You got to take care of the football. Why? Because this defense is good enough to help you win the Big 12. You got middle linebacker Nick Martin, safety Kendall Daniels, and the other safety Trey Rucker, and then outside linebacker Colin Oliver. So you look at it for me, two games that the Cowboys have in September could go a very long way in helping their chances to win the Big 12. They host Utah on the 21st of September, and then right after that, they're in Manhattan to take on K State. And speaking of the great state of Kansas, you got the Jayhawks, and this team was a very fun and exciting team to watch last year. They finished the season 9-4, and head coach Lance Leopold is really building something in Lawrence, and he's got some people talking about Kansas's football program, not just their storied basketball program. The Jayhawks can run the football like no other. Okay, it's their staple on offense. And you look at running backs Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, and then of course quarterback Jalen Daniels. I think this Kansas offense can once again do some damage in the Big 12. Also, keep an eye out for wide receivers Lawrence Arnold and Quentin Skinner this year. And then, what can you say about cornerback Mello Dotson, as he is one of 8 seniors that are projected to start this year for the Jayhawks? I talked about that game on the 26th of October, where Kansas travels to take on K State. I think that one is going to be a dandy. Now, another newcomer to the Big 12 that a lot of people are going to be talking about, and of course, people were talking about them last year. I'm talking about the Colorado Buffaloes. And of course, it's a trip down memory lane for the Buffs. They left the Big 12 for the Pac 12 back in 2011. And it's one of those things. They're back home. I know it's not their original conference, but nonetheless, they are back home. And then not only that are they back home, it's also year number 2 for Deion Sanders as Colorado's head coach. And of course, primetime came to Boulder last year with a ton of hype. I mean, there were celebrities out the yin yang trying to be on the field, and they actually were on the field for Colorado home games last year. They were must see TV. They started off strong, but then when conference play began in the Pac 12, things went south and in a hurry. Now, one thing's for sure, Colorado offensively has talent at the skill positions, okay? But they've got to get better in the trenches. Their quarterback, Shador Sanders, cannot take as many sacks, and he can't be on the run as much as he was last year. And on top of that, the Buffs got to find a better way uh, to run the football. Colorado was dead last year in the nation. You can throw all you want, but if you can't run the football and if you cannot impose your will with your offensive line, it's going to be very tough. And it's not just about the O line, because as a whole, Colorado's got to get tougher in the trenches. Why? Because their defense was 130th in the nation last year. I don't care who you are. That ain't getting it done, okay? So what are the Buffs going to be able to do on that side of the football? We know about Travis Hunter, the phenomenal athlete who's a DB and a wide receiver. You got free safety Shiloh Sanders, but like I said, the Buffs have to get better in the trenches. It's one of those where, you know what? I know that they only went 4-8 last year, but Colorado is still going to be one of those teams that people are gunning for. It's one of those where the 7th of September, we'll see them travel to Lincoln to take on Nebraska. Of course, this rivalry dates back to their days in the Big 8 conference. And we saw Nebraska go to Boulder last year and almost defeat Colorado. Okay. Then, of course, the week after that, they traveled to Fort Collins to take on Colorado State out of the Mountain West. And of course, we remember the fireworks last year between Colorado and Colorado State. And of course, Jay Norvell and Deion Sanders shook hands after the game, but I guarantee you there's no love lost between those two. Then they travel to take on UCF on the 28th of September. That could be a very fun game to watch right there for the offenses. Just some of the things to keep an eye out for this year for the Buffaloes. You look at Texas Tech and the Red Raiders, they went 5-4 within this league last year. Or actually, in each of Joey McGuire's first 2 years in Lubbock. And Texas Tech, it's going to be interesting to see if they can take that next step in this deep conference. Running back Taj Brooks, one of the better ball carriers in the Big 12. You got middle linebacker Ben Roberts, as well as another guy to keep an eye on, as is quarterback Baron Morton. But can the Red Raiders do enough to be among those top tier teams in this conference? We can only wait and see. For Cincinnati, their first year in the Big 12 was a tough one as a crew from Southern Ohio only managed to win one game within this conference. Five of those losses came by double figures. And of course, it was a different trek for them from what they were accustomed to or what they had been accustomed to in the American. Lost their head coach, of course, Luke Fickle to Wisconsin. So in steps Scott Satterfield, and he's got to try to establish his program there. Now he's going to try to do it with former Indiana quarterback Brendan Sorsby, and also keep an eye out for senior running back Corey Kiner. But to me, I still think it's going to be an uphill battle this year for the Bearcats in the Big 12. Now, for Texas Christian, it's been the best of times and it's been the worst of times for this program under Sonny Dykes. His first year, he led the Horned Frogs to a 13-2 mark with a spot in the national title game, while TCU limped to a 5-7 mark last year. So it's going to be interesting to see whether it's going to be feast or famine this year for the Horned Frogs. Sonny Dykes looks like he's going to lean on sophomore quarterback Josh Hoover, and then keep an eye out for senior wide receiver Savion Williams. You got a pair of seniors and three juniors on this offensive line for TCU as they look to get back on track in the Big 12. And then defensively, keep an eye out for free safety Bud Clark. Arizona, another one of those teams that is a newbie to the Big 12. And the Wildcats, we saw them last year. They were one win away from getting to the Pac 12 championship game. And their success actually hurt them. Why? Because they lost their head coach, Jed Fish, to Washington. So now Arizona begins life in the Big 12 with San Jose State head coach, or former San Jose State head coach, Brent Brennan. And he's going to be asked to steward this Wildcat ship. But nonetheless, Jed Fish did leave some talent in the desert for Brent Brennan to work with. You got quarterback Noah Fafita. Keep an eye out for junior wide receiver Tataroa McMillan. And you've got only one senior on the offensive line for the Wildcats, center Josh Baker. So let's see how that works out. And then keep an eye out defensively for strong safety Dalton Johnson, outside linebacker Jacob Manu, and free safety gunner Maldonado. Then there's Houston, and it was a transition year for Houston last year. They came over from the American to this league. They went 4-8. It resulted in Dana Holgerson getting fired, and he was replaced by former Tulane head coach Willie Fritz. And over the last 2 years at Tulane, Willie Fritz was 23-4. He led the Green Wave to the American Championship in 2022, but now he's got to try to do it in at Houston in the Big 12. You got senior quarterback Donovan Smith, and then you got middle linebacker Jamal Morris. But I think this is going to be a transition year for Houston as they get accustomed to things under Coach Fritz. Then you've got the Mountaineers of West Virginia. They had a surprising 9-win season last year, but what are Neil Brown and his Mountaineers going to be able to do for an encore? You got senior quarterback Garrett Green, also the explosive running back Jaheim White. He averaged nearly 8 yards per carry last year. You got four seniors on the offensive line for West Virginia, and then defensively, middle linebacker Ben Cutter, as well as safety Anthony Wilson Jr. I'll tell you, the Mountaineers have themselves a tough out of conference schedule as they're taking a trip down memory lane. They host Penn State on the 31st of August. And of course, dating back to the days when both West Virginia and Penn State were independents in football, this was a big deal. Then on the 14th of September, it's the renewal of the backyard brawl with Pitt. This time it's going to be West Virginia traveling to Pitt. Conference wise, they're at Oklahoma State on the 5th of October. They follow that up the following week by hosting Iowa State. They've got Kansas at home on the 21st of September. So the Mountaineers definitely have their work cut out for them as they look to make some noise in the Big 12. Now, for Baylor, in 2021, Dave Aranda could do no wrong. He led the Bears to a 12-2 mark and the Big 12 championship. But since then, it's been slim pickings for the Bears. They've only won 9 games over the last 2 years, which included losing 9 games last season for the first time since 2017. So, will they be able to get back on track, or is Dave Aranda's hot seat in Waco going to heat up? Because I think he's on the hot seat coming into this season. You're bringing in former Toledo quarterback Dequan Finn. What is he going to do with this offense? They've got to improve with defense. And when you think about Dave Aranda, you think about his defense going back to his time as LSU's defensive coordinator when they won the championship in 2019. But nonetheless, the Bears were 113th in the nation last year in defense. That ain't going to get it done. You do have some talent on that side of the football for Baylor with cornerback Caden Jenkins, safety Devin Bobby, and linebacker Matt Jones. And then finally, last team in the Big 12, last but certainly not least, and of course, the other newbie of the Big 12 conference. I'm talking about the Arizona State Sun Devils. And the Sun Devils limped their way out of the Pac 12 into the Big 12. They were 6-18 over the last 2 years in the Pac 12, and they're hopeful that a new league will reverse their fortunes. It's the second year for Kenny Dillingham as the head coach at ASU. He's got to improve his offense. Arizona State was 111th in the nation last year in that category. Keep an eye out for former Michigan State quarterback Sam Levitt, as well as running back Cam Scatterbo. Defensively, Arizona State was not that much better last year as the Sun Devils were 92nd in the nation in total defense. So, what are defensive end Prince Dorba and company going to be able to do? I think this year, overall, the Big 12 is wide open. You do have some talented teams in this league, and I think they're going to beat up on each other. And it's one of those where who is going to be able to separate themselves as far as being the top dogs in this league, as well as being good enough to get to the college football playoff. We've got to wait and see how things play out. But when it's all said and done, I'm going from a championship game in the Big 12. I'm going UCF and Oklahoma State. And I know that the Cowboys have been denied at the gateway, if you will, in 2 of the last 3 years as far as winning this league. I don't see them being getting denied this time. I think Oklahoma State, in my opinion, they are the team to beat in the Big 12, and I think they get the automatic bid from this league to the college football playoff. But nonetheless, I think it's going to be exciting. You got a lot of wide open football in this league. That's what Conference Commissioner Brett Yormark wants. He wants excitement, and I think the Big 12 is going to live up to it and then some for this college football campaign. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.